Today we are talking to Rebecca Clyde, co-founder and CEO of Botco.ai. Rebecca, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Miranda? It's good to see you again.
I know, it's so good to see you too. I miss seeing you in Galvanize and all the different events that we used to have, and it's nice to finally be virtually face to face again.
Right? It's been a while for sure.
So we're just kind of gonna go through what Botco AI is and give people a feel for what you do. So let's start out with your overview. What is Botco AI?
Thank you. Yeah, so Botcoai is a HIPAA compliant patient engagement platform that is used by healthcare providers to be able to communicate with primarily prospective patients, help them book more appointments, and help them move into the services that they need so that they can get the treatments or the care that they're really seeking for themselves or their family members.
I love that. And usually with medical startups, there's some type of like, we founded this because of ... What was the driving factor behind founding this company?
You know, me and my founders, we primarily have more of like a marketing background, really. I worked in, 20 years in marketing, both in the technology industry and also at my agency, Ideas Clyde, supporting several healthcare industry clients. My two business partners have also been primarily on the customer engagement, marketing automation, and even ad tech side. And so we were really taking our knowledge of marketing technology and modern marketing approaches and applying them to an industry that really needed them. With COVID, everything changed so much, and I think expectations around how healthcare providers were interacting with consumers really needed to modernize and catch up to this new, all virtual environment. And so it was a really right time for them to start utilizing some of those technologies and capabilities that have been available to other types of companies already for many years.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine with, the transition and the different expectations with healthcare, medical tech. How has this past year been for you?
It's been a really interesting journey. We were just getting ready to launch our company and start to take on broader customers right around when the whole shutdown thing happened. And so what we had to do was really refocus and say, okay, where are we seeing the biggest need? What types of customers can really benefit from our product right now? And right around that time was when we started hearing from a lot of healthcare companies and providers that were, really trying to quickly catch up during a time when all of a sudden everything changed. And that's when I realized that we had something that they could really use and that would be helpful. Our team has really grown primarily during this whole shutdown period. So most of us, I really have never even met in person. Most of the people who work at Botco.ai, we have only met over Zoom like this. And it just goes to show you can build a company in a purely remote environment.
Wow, I mean, that had to have been intimidating. I mean, that couldn't have been an easy shift to just, say, yes, we're meeting we're not meeting in person, but you're my person. I mean, was that a hard choice to make, or was it easy?
Well, we were already semi-virtual. The three founders live in, we all live in three different cities. I'm here, my co-founders in Fremont, and then my other co-founders in Toronto. But, we would make flights to see each other quite often, like just about every month. In fact, we had just been together in Hawaii for Chris, my co-founder's wedding. So we'd all just spent a whole week together. It had been really lovely right before this whole thing. So, that I think is the thing I miss the most, is that I have not seen them for over a year. We used to see each other all the time. It certainly is challenging to have to create cohesion and get people excited when you can't actually be in person. So that's the thing I miss the most. But we had already set ourselves up on all of the virtual platforms. We were very comfortable working on Zoom and Slack and all of the virtual collaboration tools. So that was not difficult for us. It's more for me just the fact that we haven't been able to see each other for such a while.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've at least struggled with not being able to see people is not being able to be in person for those pitch contests. I mean, I always looked forward to seeing, when you would speak or when you would pitch or when those things would come up. How has that transition been for you?
Oh yeah, it's so much different to have to pitch your startup over Zoom because the digital format automatically like sucks a lot of energy out. So you have to like over index on the enthusiasm and hope that stuff comes through, you know, that my like, you know, passion and determination comes through on the digital format, you know, which is harder to sense. And it's also harder because sometimes the technology lags or you have those awkward delays. And so the conversation doesn't go as smoothly as you would like, especially when you get to the Q&A part. So, you know, it's just getting comfortable with the fact that, you know, sometimes the connection will be glitchy and that's just what we have. There's nothing to be done.
Yeah, I mean, that has been a huge change. But like you said, you guys were equipped, you were already set up on the platforms, had a basic idea of how to do it. So it wasn't like a huge shift, but definitely something that everyone felt.
Oh, for sure. You know, and I was fortunate that I had spent a good part of my career at a global company at Intel, for example. And at Intel, it was very common to have teams that were distributed. So, you know, at one point I had direct reports in Malaysia, in Swindon, you know, which is in England, maybe in different sites. I was here and I might have a couple of direct reports in Santa Clara or in Hillsboro, Oregon. So I was already comfortable from a long time ago with kind of a remote and distributed team. The only change is that we actually have better tools now for how to deal with that type of situation. So I actually think that the pandemic happened during a time when we were fortunate enough to have some substitutes for those in-person situations, much better than we would have, say, 10 years ago if this had happened then.
Wow. So when exactly was Botco.ai founded? Because I'd love to know like what percentage of this time has been spent in your earlier time, or is this when you were further along?
Oh, no, we're still very early. You know, a product like ours takes a while to build because it's actually quite complex. And so the first 2 years, we were essentially validating, you know, the product, validating that the industry, the world needed what we were building. And at the time, we were really talking to a lot of people in kind of the marketing, CMO, digital engagement type of roles, testing our ideas, making sure that what we were developing would be useful to them. Then during that, we kind of entered a second period, which I call it like our beta stage, where we had our product in beta and we had just a few customers so that we could very closely control what was happening. And they were very big customers with millions of customers themselves, you know, companies that were $1 billion or bigger. But, you know, by having kind of keeping a tight beta, that allowed us to really refine the product and get it to a point where it was commercially ready to launch. And that's, you know, what we did last year was finally launch. We hired a sales team. We, you know, essentially started beating our drum so that we could get more customers. And that all happened within the last year.
That's amazing. And, you know, having launched this past year and, you know, I mean, it seemed like it really was primed right for people to be able to looking for better online solutions, better ways to connect with people. Customer experience is more important now more than ever.
Exactly. And that's where I think I always tell founders, it's like having that that belief and that conviction in your idea. And, you know, I'm a consumer of healthcare. I have had 3 children, so I've had to navigate the hospital systems multiple times for those things. And then having children, I am constantly dealing with the healthcare system. And one of the things that I have always been completely infuriated by is that they make it so hard. It's so hard. Anytime I need to make an appointment, it's like I have to block a whole hour of my day, maybe 2, to navigate all the complexity. And I just say, why do you make this product so hard for me to use? Like, you're going to get paid. Like, you're actually going to get money out of this, and a lot of it, based on what I see the insurance and claims go out of. So why are you making me wait so long to have this, to engage with your services? And I think that finally what this whole pandemic forced everybody to rethink was like, hey, we can't do that anymore because the stakes are too high. And we have to, you know, finally modernize. So that's, you're right. And again, having that conviction, even before COVID, that something needed to change, the digital engagement platforms were the way to go, and that more and more businesses would be adopting these, just believing in that internally and knowing, even when, you know, maybe I didn't know when that tipping point would happen. That's what kept me going this whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many struggles, the questions, the hassle, the runaround that you get. Sometimes you get rescheduled and they don't tell you, like you just
Oh
don't
yeah.
know.
And then you have to call to like, they tell you it's canceled, then you have to call to reschedule and it's an hour on the phone to get your
Mhm.
new time. Like it's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to know what the onboarding cycle looks like. Someone says, yes, we want to, go with Botco.ai. What does that journey look like?
That's a great question. We usually try to start with a use case that is like very, very, I would say, uh, approachable, right? So we're not trying to bite off the entire problem. We say, okay, where are you feeling the biggest pain point? And they might say something like, hey, you know what? It's trying to answer questions from patients and families about verification of benefits,
Mm-hmm.
because that part is typically very high friction. So if you could help us automate that process and people who were inquiring about, hey, does this health plan cover this treatment? Then, that would that would take 2 to 3 days off of the revenue cycle. And that can be a huge, huge win for them. And so we will focus maybe starting on that one thing that really makes a big difference for them. And then from there, start adding other things. Like maybe it's about answering questions about vaccine appointments or questions about follow-up appointments or even logistical questions, right? There's a lot of stuff that we can help with, right out of the gate, and then continue to train and add more skills to the AI so that it can do more and more for the healthcare enterprise.
So is it usually they say that they have this one issue or they have a couple or, how do you define what you start with? I mean, where do you begin? There are so many problems.
Oh yeah, I guess we're trained now to listen for the right things. Like even today, we were on a call with a health system in Florida, and they brought 20 people to this meeting, and this was the first intro call that was just supposed to be like, the follow up to the SDR call, right? It shouldn't be the entire buying committee that shows up. And like, I was like, wow, there are 20 people at this health system that want to see what we have to offer. That's insane. It took us 20 minutes just to get the intros all done. There were so many people on the call. But, and so of course they're all saying, oh, I need this, I need that, we could use it for this. And we try to help listen to everything, but where I really heard the opportunity for them to make the biggest difference is they were saying, sometimes it takes us 2 to 3 days to get back to people when they're trying to just inquire about a basic follow-up routine type of an appointment. Like we have 15 people right now that are tasked with those calls. Like if we could automate that and it could happen immediately, that would be huge, because then we can free up all of those people to deal with the high acute issues, not with the run-of-the-mill stuff. And that's really where we can come in and help. Like, there's going to be a highly specialized situation that no AI is going to be able to handle right now. But, a routine follow-up just to get like a refill on your asthma medication, that should be straightforward, right? You shouldn't have to spend hours trying to figure that out as a family member, usually parent for the child or somebody who's dealing with that chronic issue.
Yeah, I mean, just an example that comes to my mind where I was so frustrated. I was re-enrolling my son in school, and I needed an updated copy of his vaccinations. They had they had switched portals, so my old credentials no longer worked with my new credentials. And I tried resetting it, and they were like, "This is not an active person. You do not have an account." I'm like, "But I do have an account." But there was no indicator message that it had been reset. I called like 4 or 5 times and they were like, well, you're set up as a user. I'm like, right, but it says I don't exist. And it took me four days to finally get a hold of someone that was like, oh yeah, we switched portals. You don't have the new information. Let me email you. And I was just shocked that there wasn't an automated, are you calling to reset your user information for the new portal? Like I was just shocked that it took 4 days.
Mm-hmm. Right, and you need to get your child enrolled in school, or there's schools that won't even let you send. They'll tell you have to stay home until you can provide an up-to-date vaccination record. I've gotten those letters before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I know you have a sense of urgency, like my kid's education is at stake. Well, I love that you mentioned that example, because one of our customers is actually a company called STC Health, where that's how they're using our product, is exactly to answer vaccination record related questions.
Yeah.
So we already have an AI that's trained on, those kinds of issues. Where's my record? Or there's a child missing from my record. How can I get it? why is this missing? Even like, how do I reset my password so I can get into my vaccination record?
Yes.
So yeah, and it's right now it's an even more important problem because of COVID and the whole vaccination rollout. And for some people, their employment might be at stake if they can't produce that record. So super, super important problem. The healthcare industry cannot fumble on this one.
Yeah, I was shocked, and I'm so happy to hear that there's products and ways coming out that could solve these problems. Because honestly, I don't want to go through that again.
Well, yeah, of course, and it's funny that you have that experience, because I always tell, okay, in all honesty, most of the CIOs that I deal with, the majority tend to be men. Not all of them, but the majority. And what I always say is, like, you have created systems where the mothers of the world are the ones picking up the slack. Because we're the ones who are waiting on hold, who are running around, taking time out of our busy day. We have jobs too. We have stuff to do. Why is our time not valuable enough that you are getting away with a four-day lag to get this one simple thing straightened out? It should not be. And as the mothers, the chief medical officers of our families, we could not accept this any longer, right?
Yeah, and I mean the time, the resources that go into it. I mean, you're saving the end user's time, you're saving the employee's time, because I wouldn't have had to have 4 separate employee conversations.
It's so expensive. Yeah.
I mean, there's value and there's a return on investment there. I mean, I'd love to know, do you have stats or anything talking about the time that's being saved, the resources being saved, the headcount that doesn't need to be added? I mean, what does that look like?
Yes. I mean, we're hearing things like, hey, with your virtual agent, I'm able to accomplish the work of 5 people that I would have had to staff to handle that volume, or even more, right? And those are just things out of the gate. Another customer recently told us, because they were using our product more for like after hours, because they were saying, hey, after 5 p.m., people are trying to get in or inquire about appointments, and they can't get through. And so we can capture all of that traffic and all of those inquiries and requests. We're also hearing another thing, especially we have a lot of customers in the rehab and drug and alcohol kind of detox and kind of recovery centers. They're saying that it's very nerve-wracking for somebody to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I'm ready for this, or I need this. But they really have a lot of questions. They need a lot of support. And so having an AI that can answer all of those questions, kind of warmly take them through that process with no judgment, right? Because it's not a person that's judging them for their situation. Those people and those families are coming through much more informed, much more prepared, and ready to be admitted once they get all of their questions answered. And we can even handle some of the pre-intake questions through the virtual agent that we provide.
Yeah, I mean, I understand firsthand. It's so intimidating to, call someone and say, I'm going to take someone's time to answer these questions for me. I mean, I remember being a new mom and all these questions about, oh my gosh, like, is this okay? Is this not okay? I give my child is 65 pounds, but it also says in this age range, and this isn't right. And just understanding when you can, actually call and have someone there that needs to handhold you through those conversations, or when it's just, a credible source that you can say, this is affiliated with an organization that I trust, and these are the answers.
You actually just gave me a great idea. That's going to be one of our new offerings. You just sparked my imagination there. Thank you. Because you're right. I remember that confusion. There's so much conflicting information. And I remember calling the nurse line at my pediatrician's office to try to get some of those questions answered, but it'd be a 45-minute wait, and you're holding a crying baby. You're like, I can't wait on hold 45 minutes to figure out how to deal with this. I don't even know how to explain what has just happened. I just know it can't be right. Projectile vomiting. Should I be concerned or not concerned?
Is that normal? Is that okay? And you just don't.
Yeah, you don't know. And you're the first time around. It's so true. We're all kind of navigating these situations for the first time, and we need that kind of instant answer without having to be on hold, or I mean, you can't even walk around with a phone if you've got a little infant. I remember that.
I mean, the risk of Googling it, you're going to be told, go to the emergency room.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's crazy.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a quick little, step by step, and that's it, and you're in a little reassurance, right?
Yeah, no, I think you're right on track there. And with the AI that you're developing, let's say someone comes in with something that maybe you guys don't have, but it falls within your scope. Do you say, we'll add it to a product roadmap, or is there customization, not customization based on client? And how do you make those decisions?
Yeah, that's always tough, right? Because we want to say yes to everything, but at our size, we can't. And so, what I like to do is see, okay, is this something that multiple customers are going to want?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have enough demand within our existing base or our pipeline that this would be justified? So we try to do more of like a market take on it versus just an individual take on it. Because if you do everything bespoke, then it's not repeatable.
Yep.
So that's kind of the approach that we're taking. And I think one of the things we're also starting to have is conversations with integration partners that can do that more bespoke work, right? So if it's really outside of our, it's like, hey, you're using a custom EHR. Like if we did an integration, I couldn't sell it to anybody else. It's not something I can repurpose. That's kind of where we bring in like maybe a partner that can help with that.
Mm-hmm.
So we can still support their needs, but not have that big overhead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting when you're talking about something that they can use or something they can replicate, because the first thing that comes to my mind is, there are facilities where there might be individual needs for a specific facility, but if it's part of a larger scope and it's something that can be rolled out to 10 facilities, I mean, there's way more use case and way more purpose of being able to say, yep, I can build this for this one client and it's going to apply to their 10 to 15 locations.
Exactly. That's really where we're getting our sweet spot in our pipeline and our sales process is really there. It's multi-location healthcare providers. So, we might be talking to, like I have an urgent care customer that has 230 locations, right? Then an AI solution that allows them to scale is really the only way to go. They can't even conceive of anything other than that. Not everybody has 200 plus locations, but some might have 10 or 20, and still it's just as hard. So that's when technology can make a big difference, because trying to handle that much variation using even individuals is very confusing for them as well.
Mm-hmm. So when you were doing your kind of product market fit scope and you were like, who should we be talking to, who shouldn't? I mean, is that kind of where you figured that you would land, or was that more trial and error?
I mean, we always knew, I always start with like, our product is really about helping to drive revenue and customer experience. So I like to think about, well, who at the organization cares the most about contributing to revenue and contributing to a great customer experience. So it's like usually that ends up falling in the marketing realm. And in the healthcare industry, sometimes depending on the type of provider, that might be kind of in the admissions side of their kind of organization. So that's usually where we have found the discipline and the people who are really trained to think around, am I creating a great experience? Am I helping to make the revenue contribution better? That's where we're seeing the value. But, there's a lot of trial and error. Like trying to figure out where our message resonated. We tried a lot of different things, and some things took hold and some things didn't. But you only know if you kind of refine and experiment. That's the beauty of being in a startup, is you have permission to try a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's a fun that whole process of figuring out what works is actually really fun. It's like, okay, let's try this. Okay, no, not quite. You're a little bummed, but then this other thing works better. And all of a sudden we realize like we're onto something. We're getting repeatability here. We're seeing common themes. We even know, like, if we use this type of an approach, we always get a meeting, or we will always get a response back. And so we're starting to get to that point where we can learn from our experimentation and start to get good results.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that you were talking to someone in Florida. I mean, how many locations are you rolled out in so far, or states are you in so far?
That's a good question. We're approaching, I want to say, 20 customers now.
Nice.
20 customers, and we're not necessarily, of course we have a cluster here in Arizona just because of like my personal network here. Like,
right.
You can see some clusters in places where we have people, because it's like, oh, we know people that introduced us or something like that. But, it's all the big states. It's California, it's Texas, it's Florida, it's New Jersey, the states with a lot of population. We have a lot going on in the Midwest and Indiana. Yeah, but our approach is not geographic as much as it is about where those providers tend to be. And it's, I'd have to say maybe if there's one tendency, it's probably toward the warmer states. Maybe I'm noticing like, I haven't seen any other geographic trend other than that.
I'm always curious if people are like, oh yeah, no one wants to go out in, December in the Midwest. So, they're doing all telehealth appointments or, things like that. So, I mean, one thing I'd love to know is like, what has surprised you the most through this process of being a part of a startup?
Oh, wow. Every day I'm surprised. So I don't know if I could, it just depends. Well, I would have to say, the whole process of fundraising really surprised me. And in the sense that I was not prepared for the level of, I would say, how much time it would take out of my life and how much focus it would be and how long it would take. Like the whole thing about fundraising just ended up being monumentally bigger than I imagined it would be. So I would say that I completely underestimated the effort it would be required. And so that's probably the biggest thing. It was just, so much more time on my part, and probably because I'm a rookie, right? I don't know how to do this. I'm learning. I'm probably making all the mistakes, even though I have awesome coaches and they're all trying very hard to tell me what to avoid. Some things you don't learn until you actually do them yourself, right? And it's like a muscle that you have to build. And so somebody can tell you how to do it, but if I have never built that muscle, it's not going to come naturally to me. It's going to require more effort. So I would say that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, I remember always seeing your name on the list of registrations when there were events coming up, when there were speaking opportunities, when there were different things. I'm like, oh, there's Rebecca. Like you were at all of the events. So I am not surprised one bit that was, what you said with the amount of time that it takes, because you really were at every single one of the happening events or anything that involved speaking, networking, like you were there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's been always my strategy is, show up, right? That's half the battle. If you're not there, then how are you going to get the deal, right? So, and I believe very much in being a part of the community, whatever community I happen to be in. So here it's Arizona or in the women in tech community, I contribute a lot there. Right now, I'm also getting really involved in the healthcare and IT community. So there's like a race going on that's called healthcare. It's like for women in healthcare IT. So it's very specific. And, to the extent that I can get involved, I always want to be. And then I love practicing. So I see every opportunity to get on stage or to pitch as just another opportunity to practice. Because if, like all things, all muscles, if you're not constantly training them, if you're not constantly practicing them, they won't get stronger.
Yeah, I mean, I have not pitched or been on a stage in a year, so I'm super nervous about when things come back.
We're all going to get that horrible stage fright again. Like, oh, I thought I had gotten over this.
It's going to come right back. I am super nervous about that. I'm definitely nervous about that. I mean, I'd love to, kind of have our listeners walk away with some advice or guidance that you have. I mean, you've gone through the startup process, getting clients and, that whole cycle. What advice would you have to someone who's just starting out?
Oh, wow. It's like I should write a book with all my learnings, but number one, don't try to do it alone. I mean, I think the number one reason why I've been able to get to where I am is because I'm not doing it alone. I have a tremendous community. My two co-founders, Anu Shukla and Chris Mehta, are incredible human beings. They have so much experience, so much depth. They can see my blind spots every single minute. They're calling me out on them, and I value that. And I would not have been able to get to here without two awesome co-founders. So I would say, trying to be a solo founder is, I don't know, I would not be able to do it. That's all I can say. And I know that there are a lot of investors that will not invest in solo founders for that reason, because you really need a sounding board. You need somebody that can see your blind spots, because we have so many of them. And it's like super, and then for the support, because during those hard times, like to be alone is terrible. So having a co-founder, I would say, is number one rule. Have a great co-founder, or two, like in my case. So I'm extra lucky that way. And then the second thing I would say is surround, one of the reasons I feel like I've been able to get this far is just I've surrounded myself with really awesome advisors. So similar thing, it's like really great people who are mentoring me. All of my early checks have been from either successful co-founders or founders themselves, who are just further ahead than I am, or really, really seasoned business executives, like CEO level people that have run huge companies. And all of these, I have probably like 10 former, either current or former CEOs in my cap table or on my advisory board. And I go to that well constantly. Like, how did you deal with this situation? What should I do here? How should I handle that? And I get multiple points of view. So I don't just listen to one person. I get a lot of points of view, and I can kind of start to see where there's common themes or maybe something different, and I inquire about that. But that's the other thing I would say is the fact that I've been surrounded by so many amazing other CEOs that are willing to help me has been huge. So that's step 2. And then step 3 is like, in my case, it was all about understanding, the only way I was able to create a solution, or that our team was able to create a solution, is because we had lived it. We had lived the problem ourselves. Mm-hmm. And the problem was so deeply experienced that we could have good instincts around how to address it. Like, I honestly don't know how people build businesses around industries that they've never been in, or categories or things they've never experienced. I don't know how they do it. I know people do, but I don't know how I would have been able to do that. And then we also did a lot of validation. I mean, we didn't take our own thoughts at face value. We always checked in with the industry. We always checked in with our Rolodex and with people we knew that were in the field, saying, does this make sense to you? We think it's like this, but how do you see it? And we're constantly exercising that feedback loop. So that's why when I say I feel like something is going to work, it's because I have a lot of data to support it. It's not just my own little like flimsy thought up here. I've gone and done the homework around it and made sure that there's really something there.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the doesn't matter what I think, doesn't matter what you think, it's what the data says,
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's, so true in the sense of going out and experiencing the industry and understanding, where it comes from, how it gets to the point, and who the end user is going to be.
Exactly.
So, well, how can people learn more about your company?
I would say, of course, our website, Botco.ai, but, where we post like our day-to-day stuff is on LinkedIn. So, follow me on LinkedIn, Rebecca Clyde, follow Botco.ai on LinkedIn. We post a lot of great content that could maybe help in learning a little bit more about what we're up to, or seeing if it applies to your business. I'm also a big believer in sharing learnings and knowledge. Just this morning, we had a great call with somebody from a health system in Oregon who just wanted to understand AI better. Like, he was getting a lot of questions from his management. He's like, I need to learn more about this. Can you give me some notes, right? And so, we're building a relationship there, and that's super helpful. But I'm always happy to share what we have learned, and if it can help your business or your career or you as a founder, I'm super happy to pass it along. I think we're all, I really want Arizona to be an amazing place for founders and for technology startups. And so I want all of us to win, because if somebody wins, then we all win. And that's how I see it. So, sharing is the best approach, in my opinion.
That's such a good mentality to have. I mean, when you can just share information, I mean, there's someone that's like, I can have a million good ideas and it doesn't matter if someone does it, because they're the ones that did it. It's about like the people who are going to say it, the people that are going to do it. I mean, it's going to be one category or the other. So,
Exactly.
Sharing information is the best way to go. 100%. Well, thank you so much for your time. And as always, I will continue to watch Botco.ai. It has honestly been one of my favorite startups to watch grow. And, absolutely. I look for you at those pitch events. I'm like, I know she's going to have a good pitch. I'm excited to hear it.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I have to, maybe when these things start again, I have to throw out the old one and start a whole new one, so it's fresh.
I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. Well, thank you so much, and best of luck on your journey.
Thank you so much, Miranda. Great seeing you again, and thanks for doing this. Thanks for having me.